Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the quiet, candlelit world of a medieval village where the men have gone off to war, and the women left behind are forced to navigate not just work and survival, but something far more personal. Picture it, a thatched roof cottage on the edge of the woods, mist curling around its walls, and you, yes, you, standing at the threshold with a secret pulsing in your chest that you don't dare name aloud. The fire crackles, bread bakes in the oven, and somewhere far away the church bells toll, reminding you of what's expected: obedience, modesty, and silence. But what if you don't want to be silent? What if the real battle isn't on the fields where nights fall, but inside your own ribs? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the birds do. The world outside your window is still gray with the hush of early dawn. The hearth has gone cold, the coals asleep beneath a thin layer of ash. You stretch under the coarse wool blanket, feeling the stiffness in your shoulders, your hips, your back. But it's not just physical. There's another ache. Quiet, insistent. You try not to name it, but it's there. Desire. Not the kind the church talks about in fire and brimstone. Not lust, not wicked temptation. No, this is something older, simpler. The warmth of another body, the comfort of skin against skin, of breath beside yours in the long night. The kind of ache that deepens in silence, that becomes louder with every passing day of solitude. Your husband marched off with the levy nearly 3 years ago. No letters, no news, only rumors. Another campaign, another winter. You don't know if he's alive. You don't know if he's dead. You just know he's gone. And you remain, with the roof to mend, the fields to tend, the chickens to feed, the hearth to stoke. Life doesn't stop for war. It only shifts its burden onto different shoulders. Historians still argue whether medieval women, especially in the lower classes, had space for desire when survival was their daily task. But your body knows better. Your skin remembers. In the still moments, when the bread is rising, when the water boils, when the loom hums softly, you remember too. A kiss in the hayloft, fingers brushing in passing, a shared look across a crowded market. Moments that once meant nothing now echo in the hollows of your chest. You go about your chores in silence, but not because you're pious, because you're afraid the sound of your own thoughts might betray you. The church teaches that a woman's thoughts must be pure, that her body is a vessel for obedience, that any longing beyond her station is a crack through which the devil creeps. You believe and you don't believe. You are loyal and disloyal in the same breath. You feel it most in the evenings, after the stew is cooled, after the doors are bolted, after the last candle flickers low, the silence is too deep, the shadows too familiar. You lie in bed, the rough wool blanket scratching your thighs, and you think about the way it used to feel when someone held you, not even for passion, just warmth, just the sense of being known. Your hand drifts, and you stop it. You press your palms together and pray. Not for salvation, not for your husband's safe return. You pray for stillness, for clarity, for this ache to leave you. But it doesn't. It roots itself in your marrow and waits. In the village you notice other women, the way they linger in the market square, the way their hands brush as they pass loaves, the way laughter grows louder when no men are present. Not flirtation, not sin, just something else. Connection, recognition, a mutual knowing that doesn't need words. You remember when the midwife came last spring. She stayed 2 nights because the roads were flooded. She was warm and strange and kind. She asked if you'd ever felt hollow. You didn't know how to answer. She told you it was normal, that it didn't make you wicked, that the body, left to itself, begins to speak in different ways. The memory stays with you longer than it should. You begin to listen more carefully to your body, the way your breath catches when your hand brushes your collarbone, the way your heartbeat quickens when you catch someone's eye too long. You tell yourself it's just the season, the heat, the isolation, but deep down you know better. You were not made to be alone forever, and yet you are. At the chapel, the priest speaks of suffering, of temptation, of Eve and the apple. You kneel, you whisper. You do not confess everything, you keep your secrets, but your silence is a form of resistance. After Mass, you walk slowly through the fields. The sun is warm on your neck. Your dress clings slightly with sweat. The breeze lifts your hem. You pause by the stream. You dip your feet. The coolness sends a shiver up your spine. You sit on the bank and close your eyes. And for the first time in days, you let the thought complete itself. I miss being touched. Not just the act, the intimacy, the belonging, the trust. The priests say this hunger is a threat. But to you, it feels more like a reminder that you are alive, that your body is not dead wood, that your heart still beats, still hopes, still aches to be known. You return home, you bake bread, you hang herbs, you sew a patch into your only good dress. You do what you must. But something has shifted. The ache is no longer an enemy. It is a companion. A quiet voice that says, you are still here. Section 2. Chores, Skin, and the Secret Language of Women. The morning comes again, just like it always does. The sun rises sluggishly behind thick clouds, casting a pale light over your small plot of earth. You stand outside your cottage, hands on your hips, and take in the sight of your world. Chickens cluck softly in the corner. The garden is overrun with weeds, but something in you likes the wildness of it, likes that not every part of your life has been tamed. Your arms are sore from chopping wood yesterday. There's a bruise on your thigh from where you bumped into the hearth. Your hands are cracked from lye and water. But you're alive, and your body tells you so with every throb and ache. You stretch. Not for show, not even for relief, but because it feels good. The pull of muscle, the opening of your rib cage, the stretch of your neck as your head tips back. For a moment, you imagine someone watching, not with judgment, just watching. Seeing. Then you shake the thought away. Back to work. As you gather eggs from under flustered hens, you hum. A low, simple tune that loops without end. It's not from church, it's from somewhere older. Maybe from your grandmother, or from a time even before that. It has no words, but your body knows the melody. The rhythm matches your steps as you walk to the stream to wash clothes, as you stir the pot of barley, as you hang linens in the wind. Wind is different now. You notice it more. The way it lifts your skirt just slightly as you hang damp sheets, the way it snakes around your waist, wraps around your shoulders, tugs gently at your hair. It feels like something alive, something playful, something curious. You blush at the wind. But isn't that the truth of it? That the world is full of touches that no one sees? Historians still debate whether peasant women had privacy, whether there was time or space in a single-room cottage to feel alone, to feel something like desire. But you know there's a kind of privacy that comes not from walls, but from silence, from the fact that no one asks, so you don't have to lie, that no one watches, so you can slip into small indulgences, like running your fingers along the edge of your shift while it dries, like pressing your thighs together under your dress when no one's looking, like washing your arms slowly at the stream just because the water feels good. You don't call it anything. It doesn't need a name. It just is. Other women feel it too. You're sure of it now. The miller's wife always takes the long way home after she picks up flour, past the shepherd's hut, past the orchard, past the brook. There's no reason for it, except maybe there is. Maybe she likes the sound of water, or maybe she likes that moment at the edge of the trees when no one can see her and she can close her eyes and just be. You pass her once there. Her hair is down, her sleeves rolled. She jumps when she sees you and laughs too quickly. You don't say anything, just smile. That smile stays with you the rest of the day. You begin to see these little rebellions everywhere. The way the butcher's daughter picks flowers and tucks them into her bodice. The way the widow paints her lips with crushed berries on feast days. The way the tanner's wife wears her husband's shirt around the house. These aren't seductions. They're spells, small acts of defiance, of remembrance, of self. You understand now, desire doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be about anyone else. It can live in the tilt of your head as you admire your own reflection in a basin of water. In the way your fingers dance while you spin thread. In the song that slips past your lips while you knead dough. One afternoon, while drying herbs near the window, you catch your reflection in the glass. You're older than you remember. The lines around your eyes are deeper. But there's a light there too. A kind of softness that wasn't there before. You look at yourself, not as a mother, not as a wife, not as a servant of God, but as a woman with a body, with memory, with want. That night, you light 2 candles instead of one, not for the light, but for the warmth. You sit by the fire and sip honeyed milk. You touch the back of your neck and think about hands that once held you and hands that never did. Desire lives in the gaps between touches, in what's missing, in what was once there and now isn't, in what could be. You go to sleep with your hand on your belly, your breath slow and even, your body quiet and still. And you dream, not of sin, not of shame, but of running barefoot through tall grass, of warm sun on your thighs, of laughter that lingers. You wake smiling, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, you don't apologize for that smile. Section 3. When no one is watching, rituals of solitude and self. The days grow warmer, though the nights still hold on to the chill. You rise with the sun as always and dress in silence. The fabric of your camise is thin in places, worn from years of scrubbing and patching. Still, you choose this one today. It fits closer to the skin, smooth and familiar. You tie your apron tight around your waist and step outside into the hush of morning mist. There's a strange peace in these early hours before the village stirs. You walk to the well alone, passing crooked fences and shuttered windows, and you carry the heavy bucket with practiced ease. The handle digs into your palm, but you don't mind. There's strength in your arms now, shaped by work. The church may preach humility, but your body preaches resilience. It's when you bend to draw water that it happens again, that flicker. Your bodice pulls tight. The curve of your chest presses against the fabric, and for a second your own skin surprises you. It feels alive. Not in shame, not in vanity, but in presence. And you start to realize something. When no one is watching, your body behaves differently. It stretches, reaches, breathes in a way it never does under the scrutiny of others. You do too. Your steps become slower, more grounded. Even your chores carry a rhythm that feels intentional. Historians sometimes label medieval women's lives as mechanical, grueling days of repetition. But repetition isn't always mindless. Sometimes it's a ritual. And for you, rituals are beginning to take on new meanings. You add lavender to your washing today. Not because you need to, but because you like the smell. You smooth wrinkles from your skirts longer than necessary. You comb your hair by the window, not just to untangle it, but to feel the bristles glide against your scalp. It isn't that you've become obsessed with your appearance. It's that you've started noticing. You're paying attention to how the wind feels on your skin, how the sun warms the back of your neck, how your breath slows when your fingers trail along your forearm after a bath. Desire in this quiet solitude doesn't need an object. It doesn't need another person. It exists in the curve of your own spine, in the beat of your pulse, in the damp heat that sometimes blooms low in your belly without invitation. You don't chase it. You don't fear it. You simply acknowledge it. One afternoon, you visit the midwife, not for herbs, but just to talk. You mention headaches, sleeplessness, vague discomfort. She eyes you knowingly and hands you a pouch of dried mugwort. Put it under your pillow, she says, and listen to your dreams. Sometimes they'll tell you what your waking self won't. You thank her. You don't say what you're really thinking, that you already know what's keeping you up at night. The dreams have started again, not nightmares, not visions of fire and damnation, but warmth, hands, lips, not always your husband's, sometimes a stranger's, sometimes no face at all, just the sensation of being held. It's terrifying how much you miss that. Not even sex exactly, but closeness, that hush between two breaths, that knowing glance that says you're not alone. The church teaches that longing must be punished. That desire is dangerous, that a woman left to her own thoughts is a gateway to corruption. But you've been alone for months now, and the only thing that's grown in your solitude is awareness. You begin to carry rosemary in your apron pocket. For remembrance, you say, but also because it smells like spring, and when you hold it to your nose, something inside you settles. You grind cloves just for the joy of their sharp bite. You chew fennel because it makes your breath taste sweet. You dry mint for no reason at all. You begin to understand what older women meant when they said, there are ways to tend to the heart when the body is left waiting. In the evenings, when the shadows stretch across the walls and the candle gutters low, you find yourself brushing your own arms as though they belong to someone else. Sometimes you draw a bath in the wooden tub, heat the water with stones, and let yourself sink in slowly. It feels indulgent, it feels necessary, and in those moments, you begin to say things out loud. I miss being touched. I miss laughing with someone at night. I miss being seen. You whisper them into the steam rising from the water, into the quiet that answers you back. Not because you expect a reply, but because you want to hear your own truth spoken, even if only once. You remember stories, whispered ones, of women who lived together in later years. Widows and sisters, midwives and spinners who shared more than a roof. You wonder if they too discovered this way of being, this slow reclamation of the self, unshaped by men. You lie awake that night, listening to owls in the trees. The bed feels big, not empty exactly, but expectant. Your hands rest on your belly, your legs curl inward. You do not touch yourself, not because you fear sin, but because you don't need to tonight. Just being present is enough. Just feeling the weight of your own body, the slow in and out of breath, the beat of your heart against the mattress. You are whole, not perfect, not pious, not untouched, but whole. And in the flicker of candlelight before the flame dies, you let yourself believe, just for a moment, that this wholeness is enough. Section 4, the temptation of memory and the safety of shadows. The days pass in rhythm now, work, rest, breath, thought. It's not peace, not exactly, but it's a kind of balance. You wake with the birds, you tend the hearth, you carry the weight of a world that never stops turning. But beneath the rhythm something else pulses, an old memory rising like a tide. It begins, as most things do, with scent. The late spring sun has coaxed the lilacs into bloom. Their perfume clings to the air around your cottage, and as you walk the worn path toward the stream, you pause to gather a small bundle. You don't need them. You want them. You hold them close to your chest, breathe deeply, and for a moment you're no longer standing on this dusty path in a war-worn village. You're 17 again, newly married, nervous, expectant. You remember the way your husband once looked at you, unsure but reverent. You remember the weight of his hand on the small of your back, the way he once traced the curve of your cheek with his thumb after harvest. Those nights were clumsy, yes, but also soft, honest, real. Now those nights feel like dreams, or worse, like stories that happened to someone else. You reach the stream. The water runs fast today, swollen with snow melt from the hills. You sit, ankles in the current, skirts hiked to your knees, and you let the cold shock your senses awake. You wash slowly, letting the water kiss your skin. You've always known this stream, washed here as a child, bathed here as a bride. Now you sit here as something else, not girl, not wife, not widow, just woman. Historians argue whether medieval women felt longing without romantic fulfillment, as if absence could erase hunger. But you know otherwise. Memory feeds desire. Every face you once kissed, every hand you once held, they come back, not as ghosts, but as visitors. Welcome ones, dangerous ones. The church teaches that to revisit such memories is a kind of sin. That desire tied to the past is just as deadly as desire indulged in the present. But the church has never known what it is to sleep alone for years, to carry your grief in your hips, your silence in your spine. So you remember, and in remembering, you feel. One night, while stirring the stew, you hum a song he once taught you. It slips from your lips unbidden. Your fingers move in time to the tune. You smile. Not because it's joyful, but because it's yours. You begin talking to him again, quietly, at first just as you drift to sleep. A sentence here, a question there, then more. You tell him about the garden, about the hens, about the way your hips hurt when it rains. You ask if he remembers the riverbank, if he still thinks of the first night after the feast. You don't get answers, but you keep talking. And through that one-sided conversation, your body wakes up again. It's subtle. The way your breath catches when you run a comb through your hair, the way you trace the rim of your cup with your finger while staring into the fire, the way your eyes linger too long on the curve of a traveling merchant's smile. You tell yourself it's nothing, that it's just habit, that it's just memory tugging you gently. But you know better. Desire doesn't vanish. It goes underground. It hides in shadows, in old songs and old places, in the curve of your own neck as you turn your head, in the flicker of candlelight across bare skin. There are moments, especially in the dark, when you consider more dangerous thoughts. What if he never comes back? What if no one does? What if this ache, this solitude, this strange in-between is all there is? You shiver, not from cold, from the truth. You begin to do small things differently. You start brushing your skin with lavender oil at night. You keep a ribbon beneath your pillow, his favorite color. You add an extra spoon of honey to your porridge. No one notices, but you do. And these little rituals become armor, not against sin, but against despair. There's a kind of power in choosing pleasure, even in secret. You remember your grandmother once whispered about women who had herbs for every ailment, including heartache. You wonder now what those herbs really treated. You've heard the old stories of women bathing in moonlight, of charms buried under threshold stones, of ointments made from ash and fennel to stir the blood and warm the belly. Not spells exactly, but not spells. One evening you sit outside as the sun sets. The sky is the color of ripe plums. A breeze carries the smell of peat smoke and wild thyme. You close your eyes and lean your head back, and without warning, your own hand trails up your thigh, not with urgency, not with shame, just curiosity. You pause, not in guilt, but in reverence. You let your fingers rest there, just for a beat. And in that stillness, you feel whole. Not because someone else is touching you, but because you are allowed to feel. No one sees, but even if they did, you're beginning to care less. The village gossips, yes, they always will, but there's power in solitude. In knowing yourself so fully that shame begins to lose its grip, that fear becomes background noise, that want becomes wisdom. That night you whisper a new prayer, not for his return, not for forgiveness, but for courage, to keep remembering, to keep feeling, to keep living, because you are not just a vessel, not just a wife, not just what others say you are. You are fire and wind and skin and breath. You are a song hummed under your breath, a story told in your own language, a body that remembers. And as the candle flickers low, you place your hand over your chest and feel the rhythm there, the steady drum that says, I am still here. I am still wanting. I am still mine. Section 5, the unspoken pact between women. By now, you've begun to notice the glances, the way women's eyes meet and linger just a bit longer than before. Not in confrontation, not in judgment, but in recognition, as if you're all carrying the same hidden ember and afraid to let it spark into flame. At the market, the baker's daughter hums a song that makes your cheeks warm. You don't know the words, but the tune settles low in your belly like a secret. You trade her goat's cheese for herbs, your fingers brushing as you exchange goods. Neither of you says anything, but she winks before turning away. That night, as you grind fennel and sage in your mortar, your mind drifts, not to the baker's daughter exactly, but to the feeling of being noticed, of being seen not as a shadow of who you once were or a function to fulfill, but as someone still alive. You've stopped trying to bury your thoughts beneath prayer and penance. You've started feeding them in small, cautious ways. And you begin to understand something deeper, that the unspoken world of medieval women was rich and complex, woven in glances, in laughter, in shared labor, and shared longing. There is a language you all speak, even if no one has ever written it down. Historians still argue whether medieval women formed meaningful bonds beyond marriage or blood, but you know better. You know what it feels like to pass another woman in the woods, both of you carrying bundles, and smile without saying a word. You know the way you all laugh too loud at feast days and stand too close at the bread ovens. You know the way someone reaches to fix your hair and their hand lingers just a second longer than needed. These aren't just friendships, they are lifelines. There's the widow on the edge of the village who weaves cloth. She never remarried. People call her strange, but you know better. She has no master, no children, just a loom and a cat and the clean lines of a life carved by choice. You bring her eggs once a week. She pays you in strips of dyed ribbon and stories told in whispers. Did you hear, she says, about the 2 nuns up north who ran away together? You widen your eyes, not in judgment, but curiosity. They say they disguised themselves as men and lived in the hills. Hunters, lovers, free. She says it with a shrug, but you see the gleam in her eye. Whether the story is true doesn't matter. What matters is that you both imagine it could be. It becomes part of your shared mythology, the secret canon of womanhood no priest ever preaches, the songs you hum while kneading dough, The way you tuck rosemary in your apron not for flavor, but for memory. The way you press dried rose petals into your prayer book, not because it's holy, but because it once touched your skin. You and the widow start to spend more time together, not in scandal, in safety. You talk of dreams, of aches, of that moment at dusk when loneliness curls around your ankles like a cold cat. Sometimes you brush her hair, sometimes she braids yours. It means nothing. It means everything. One evening she shows you how to make a salve from beeswax, tallow, and calendula. For the hands, she says. But the way she rubs it into your palm, slowly, thoroughly, you wonder if that's the whole truth. You don't ask. You don't need to. Desire in this world rarely needs a name. It exists in these gestures, in the way two women lean toward each other while spinning, in the way you catch your breath when she laughs, in the warmth that follows you home after visiting her. You start weaving more ribbons into your bodice, red, gold, blue. You do it for her, for you, for the woman you once were and the one you are becoming again. The church would say this is idolatry, worshiping the self, the flesh, the pleasure of companionship. But you no longer fear the church. You fear only silence, the long, creeping kind that erases women one chore at a time. So you fill the silence with humming, with stories, with shared glances. One night at a gathering, a song begins. You know this one. It's old, a folk tune passed from mouth to mouth like a blessing. The other women join in. The men shout over you, but you keep singing, louder, eyes closed, bodies swaying. When the song ends, you're breathless, glowing. The widow catches your eye and nods once, slowly. It says, I see you. I know. You smile back. Because for the first time in a long while, you are not alone in your longing, and that makes all the difference. You walk home that night with bare arms, letting the cool wind kiss your skin. There's no shame in the flush that rises in your cheeks, no guilt in the way your chest rises and falls. Desire, you're learning, doesn't need to be secret. It just needs to be safe. And you are beginning to create that safety, not in a room with walls, but in a world of glances, songs, and shared bread. A world where the women around you become mirrors, reflecting back your own yearning and reminding you, you are not wrong for wanting. You are not cursed. You are simply human. Section 6, the sacred body, faith, shame, and reclamation. The chapel bells ring before dawn. You're already awake. You lie beneath the linen sheets, eyes open, listening to their echo across the hills. The sound is soft, almost mournful, like a lullaby for the faithful. You rise and dress quickly, covering your hair with a plain veil and slipping on your woolen cloak. Church waits. Inside the small stone chapel, incense curls toward the ceiling. The priest's voice drones over Latin verses. The pew beneath you is cold. You clasp your hands tight, as if squeezing them hard enough might wring the doubt from your bones. Because today, like many days before, you feel torn. The church tells you your body is a vessel of sin. That woman brought the fall. That Eve, in her hunger, doomed the world. And so you kneel, you pray, you try to forget how good your own skin feels in the morning light. But the longer you live in this body, the more sacred it begins to feel. Not shameful, not dangerous, just yours. The priest speaks of purity, of temptation, of the danger of unchecked desire. His voice is dry as parchment. He doesn't know what it means to hunger and be denied. He doesn't know how a woman's longing can settle into her muscles, into her spine, into the curve of her own breath. Outside, the sun is rising. Gold spills across the chapel floor, lighting on the stone saints, their eyes blank, their bodies still. You wonder if they ever felt what you feel. If Saint Cecilia ever lay awake at night, longing not for martyrdom, but for warmth. Historians still debate how much spiritual agency women were allowed in the medieval church. Some argue they were confined to submission, silence, veils. Others point to mystics and anchorites, women who claimed visions, ecstasies, and divine hunger. Julian of Norwich, Hildegard of Bingen, women who turned desire into liturgy. You've heard whispers about those mystics, women who moaned during prayer, who wrote of being pierced by divine light. Their words read like poems or confessions. You wonder, as you leave the chapel, if the line between holiness and hunger is as thin as they say. Later that day, you tend the herbs in your garden. Your fingers sift through thyme, basil, tansy. You press a mint leaf to your lips. The scent is bright, biting. You close your eyes, and you begin to understand something radical. Your body is not the enemy. Your body is not wicked for wanting. It is wise. It knows what brings you comfort, what brings you calm, what brings you back to yourself. You remember bathing last week slowly in the twilight, not out of lust, not for cleanliness, just to feel. The water lapping at your thighs, the scent of lavender oil, the low hum in your chest that felt like reverence. That was prayer too, not the kind the church recognizes, but prayer nonetheless. Women in your village know this. They may not speak it, but they live it. You see it in the way they walk barefoot in spring, in the way they press petals into their hair, in the way they carve quiet moments for themselves after the work is done. There's the weaver who sings while she spins, her voice low and full. There's the miller's wife who gathers violets, not for medicine, but because they remind her of her mother. There's the girl who dances alone near the edge of the woods when she thinks no one's watching. These are acts of worship. They do not kneel, they do not confess, they do not flagellate, they live, and in living they reclaim what was never truly lost. Still, the church looms. Its shadows stretch long. You know the risks. A woman too free is a woman accused of heresy, of witchcraft, of unnatural behavior. You've heard stories. A midwife drowned in the next county for speaking too boldly. A girl exiled for refusing to marry. So you tread carefully. You wear your veil at mass. You keep your eyes lowered, but inside you burn. And in private you light your own candles. Not to saints, to yourself. You begin writing small things in the margins of your prayer book. Not blasphemy, just reminders. Today the wind felt like silk. The taste of honey lingered. I remembered his voice. You stitch a rose into your apron's hem. You carve your initials into the base of a wooden bowl. You whisper psalms at sunset with your hands over your chest, feeling your own heartbeat as proof. You are still here. You are still worthy. Because what if the sacred wasn't always in denial? What if holiness lived in the pleasure of sunlight on skin, in the warmth of bread fresh from the oven, in the trembling hush before sleep? You begin to think God, if he watches, must surely understand. He made you, after all, not just your mind, but your skin, your hunger, your heat. He made you whole, and it is not sin to exist in that wholeness. So you pray, but differently now. You pray while combing your hair, thanking your body for staying strong. You pray while stroking the cat, feeling its purr echo in your chest. You pray while lying in the grass, eyes closed, breathing in the scent of lilac and damp soil and possibility. You no longer ask forgiveness for wanting. You ask only for time, for space, for enough quiet to hear your own heart, and maybe for the courage to trust it. Section 7. The Village Watchers and the Fear of Being Seen. It begins with a glance, a long, lingering look from the blacksmith's wife across the churchyard. Not unfriendly, but heavy, like the weight of a hand pressed on your shoulder without permission. You're not doing anything, just gathering mint. Yet her gaze lingers too long. Her mouth tightens. She says nothing, but the message is clear. I'm watching you. In a village this small, privacy is a myth. The stone walls have ears. The well has eyes. The market stalls whisper. You can't dance too freely, laugh too loudly, linger too long outside another woman's cottage without someone taking notice. And when they do, the stories start. You know this well, because once you were a teller of stories yourself. Back when your body was still stitched tightly into the seams of respectability. Back when your longing hadn't yet stretched its wings. But now you are a woman who smiles without being spoken to. A woman who walks alone in the woods, who keeps rosemary near her bed. A woman who hums songs from your mother's time, the kind people say are best left unsung. Historians debate whether medieval communities were more permissive than their laws suggest. Some point to surviving court records, women fined for dancing on feast days, for immodest gestures, for wearing color without license. The punishment was often public humiliation, not imprisonment. But humiliation scars deeper, and so you grow careful. You wrap your joy in stillness. You hide your comfort in routine. You braid your hair in secret and remove the ribbons before stepping into view. Still, suspicion grows like mold, silent, clinging. The baker's daughter stops smiling at you in the market. The miller's wife crosses herself when you walk past. Even the children pause in their games when you approach, as if taught that you carry something dangerous. One day a note is left at your door, no name, just a scrap of parchment with a single word, beware. You sit with it for a long while, not afraid, just tired, because the burden of being seen is heavier than silence. You think about retreating, shrinking back into the safety of conformity. Prayers, plain dresses, quiet, obedient silence. It would be easier, cleaner. You know the rules. You could play the part. But when you look at your reflection in the basin's surface, something stops you. That woman, the one with soft lines forming near her mouth from smiling, the one whose hands smell of thyme and wax, she is not a danger. She is not wicked. She is simply alive, awake, a little bold, a little bright, and bright things are always seen. So you choose a middle path. You continue your daily life, but you build your defenses, not with weapons, but with ritual. You begin waking before the village. In the pre-dawn silence, the world belongs to you. You gather water before the others stir. You let your voice sing a single line of song, soft and clear. You light a candle, not for any saint, but for yourself. A small fire that says, I will not go quietly. You avoid lingering glances in public, but you still visit the widow, still press wildflowers into the pages of your old book, still touch your own wrist in the quietest hour and smile at the beat of your pulse. Desire, you've learned, is not just about hunger. It's about defiance. To feel anything in a world that wants you numb is a rebellion. To choose beauty when others choose bitterness. To speak gently when you're told to be silent. To wear red ribbons stitched beneath the hem of your petticoat. Hidden, yes, but yours. One night, a storm rolls in. Thunder grumbles like an old god. Rain lashes the roof in thick sheets. You sit by the hearth with a bowl of lentils, the fire casting flickering gold across the stone floor. You feel warm, safe, unseen. But outside, you know, someone may be watching. So you rise, you walk to the door, and you open it. The wind slaps your cheeks, wild and wet. The village is asleep. The world smells of earth and sky. You step barefoot into the mud and tilt your face to the heavens. The rain is cold, sharp, real. And in that moment, you feel more alive than you have in years. You laugh, loud and sudden and unladylike. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them cast their stones. Because the woman they fear, the one who lives in her body, who sings to herself, who dares to feel joy in the rain, is you. And you will not vanish for their comfort. You will not drown your hunger in prayer. You will not snuff out your fire to fit inside their silence. You will live, because you remember what your mother's mother whispered long ago when the village girls passed around stories they weren't supposed to know. They'll call you wicked either way, so you might as well dance. Section 8. Secrets woven into thread. It starts with a thread, a single strand of red tucked carefully into the hem of your linen shift. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to feel like something, like defiance, like memory, like a secret stitched close to your skin. You're not sure why you do it, not exactly, but it makes you stand taller. It gives you a sense of ownership, a quiet declaration that your body, your thoughts, your desires are not theirs to discipline. Women in your village have always stitched stories into cloth. There's the spinner who weaves patterns into her shawls that no one else seems to notice, strange shapes and loops that seem almost like language. There's the seamstress who embroiders tiny foxes along her daughter's collar and claims it's just for good luck. But you see the grin in her eyes when people fail to notice them. Your grandmother once told you that thread holds more than warmth. It holds truth. That a woman's needle was her pen in a world where her voice wasn't welcome. You didn't understand it then. Now you do, because now you find yourself sewing long into the night. Not just to mend or patch, but to speak. A spiral in blue thread here, a double stitch in the shape of a star. Patterns your hands remember, even if your tongue does not. Historians still argue whether women's textile work was a conscious form of rebellion or just mundane routine, but you know better. You felt it. The way your heart beats differently when you knot a design only another woman would recognize. The way you smile when you see someone else's apron marked in the same quiet code. It becomes a language. A stitch at the shoulder means I see you. One near the hem says be careful. A patch of purple thread, you're not alone. You begin to notice it everywhere. On the veil of the apothecary's niece, 3 tiny stars. On the sash of the farmer's daughter, green vines, curling in defiance of uniformity. Even the widow, your quiet friend, starts to wear darker threads in her otherwise neutral bodice. These are not symbols the men see. They do not know what to look for. They assume all embroidery is domestic, harmless, decoration. They do not see the pulsing network of connection growing beneath their noses. And still, you keep sewing. You make gifts, simple cloth bags of dried lavender and mint, and give them to the other women with a smile. Some accept them without question. Others run their fingers along the seams, catch your eye, and nod. They understand. You and the widow now meet often, not always to talk, not always to touch. Sometimes simply to sew side by side in silence. Thread moves through cloth like breath, steady and sure. The scent of beeswax candles and the scrape of her chair on stone make the space feel holy. This is your chapel now. One night you bring her a scarf, a deep blue, embroidered with a silver spiral. Her fingers hover over it before she takes it. It's beautiful, she says, but her eyes say more. I know what this means. I know what you're giving me. You don't need to explain. You just take her hand, and for a moment the years between you both disappear. There is no fear, no guilt. Just two women who remember what it means to feel human. Later that week, something happens. The priest preaches a different sermon, one with more fire than usual. He warns of unnatural affections and women who seek power through temptation. His gaze sweeps the pews like a blade. You don't move. You don't flinch. You sit beside the widow, shoulder to shoulder, your scarf wound tightly beneath your cloak. The message is clear. Someone is watching. Someone suspects. But you are not afraid, not the way you used to be. You know now that fear doesn't protect you. It just cages you. So that night when you return home, you don't hide the scarf. You hang it by the hearth. You don't douse your candle. You let it burn. You don't fold away the threads you've been weaving into your blanket. You add one more, a red stitch at the edge, a flame, a promise, that you will not forget what your hands can say, even when your mouth must stay quiet. You remember an old tale, passed from woman to woman, rarely spoken aloud, of a queen who stitched her story into a tapestry when no one believed her, of how her thread told the truth when her tongue could not, of how, centuries later, other women saw those same shapes and understood. This is what you are doing. Not just surviving, not just yearning, but recording, so that someday someone else, some girl or woman not yet born, might run her fingers along your seams and say, she lived, she dared, she wanted, she survived. The next morning, you walk through the village wearing a cloak you've made from old scraps. It doesn't match, it doesn't follow fashion, but each piece holds a memory, a secret, a stitch of truth. People glance, some sneer, some smile, some don't notice. But one woman, a stranger visiting from another village, nods slowly when she sees the spiral on your sleeve. And in that moment, you feel something powerful, not hidden, not guilty, not small, but seen. Section 9. When the body remembers before the mind does. It begins in your sleep. You dream of hands, not cruel or grasping, but warm, familiar. They trace your shoulders, your arms, the curve of your spine as if remembering something long forgotten. You wake before dawn, breath caught in your throat, your heart thudding against your ribs like a bird against a closed window. There's no one in the room, just the hush of morning and the soft creak of wood as the wind leans against the cottage walls. But the sensation lingers. Your skin feels electric. Every breath you draw feels like memory, half-formed, unspoken, but heavy with meaning. And as you lie still in your straw mattress, you realize something strange. Your body remembers a touch your mind does not. Desire in the Middle Ages wasn't often written about, not in ways that feel true to you. Love songs and courtly poems speak of knights and ladies, chaste kisses and longings channeled into war. But real, physical, everyday hunger, that was kept out of the records, or else labeled sinful, dangerous, madness. Historians argue whether medieval women had space for desire outside of marriage or motherhood. Most texts were written by men, priests, scribes, monks, but here and there traces of the body slip through, recipes for love potions hidden between household instructions, marginal doodles of embracing figures, letters between nuns that tremble with affection far too tender to be merely spiritual. You don't need records to tell you what you already know. Bodies do not forget. You feel it in your muscles, the way your fingers linger too long on the rim of your cup, the way your knees brush the edge of your bed frame at night and leave a ghost of sensation. You've tried to pray it away, to work it away, but it returns, quiet, steady, familiar. Sometimes you sit beneath the apple tree behind your home. The earth is cool. The bark presses against your back like an old friend. You close your eyes and let the breeze lift the edge of your skirt. And for a moment, you let yourself remember, not anyone in particular, not any one moment, just the sensation of being known, not watched, not used, known. There's a difference, and you're only now beginning to understand it. The church never taught you that longing could be peaceful, that you could ache without shame, that you could want and not be wicked. But your body teaches you this. Every time your breath catches at the smell of juniper, every time your skin tingles when you walk barefoot through the stream, every time your own palm brushes the hollow beneath your collarbone and finds something tender there. You're not trying to be unruly. You're not trying to rebel. You're trying to remember who you are when no one else is telling you who to be. And sometimes remembering feels like longing. You hear other women speak in hushed tones over laundry lines beside the well, at twilight when the children are asleep and the men are still at war. You catch fragments. I still dream of her voice. I don't think I'll ever feel that again. He made me laugh like no one else. These are not confessions. These are echoes. Each woman's body holds her own. And while their faces remain composed, their eyes say more than words ever could. You've learned to read those eyes, to feel less alone in your remembering. And yet there are moments when the ache overwhelms, when the simple act of waking feels like stepping into a world too quiet, when you press your hands against your chest and wish, just once, for someone else's there instead. Not to own you, just to understand you. It's not just touch you crave. It's recognition. It's the feeling of someone seeing you, not as a worker, a sister, a parishioner, a woman to be corrected, but as a whole, breathing, desiring thing. You try to give that to yourself. You oil your skin with rosemary. You speak softly to your reflection in the water bucket. You wrap your arms around your own waist and rock gently, like you've seen mothers do for their babies. Because sometimes the only arms you have are your own, and still, it is enough. You remember an old woman who once told you, the body always remembers before the mind dares to. You didn't understand her then. You do now. That memory isn't always about others. Sometimes it's about yourself, about how it felt to move without fear, to laugh with your whole face, to dance not for show, but because the music made your bones ring. You want that again. So you practice, you dance alone in your home to the rhythm of your own heartbeat. You whisper songs to yourself while grinding flour. You press your lips to the back of your hand, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Because even when you forget, your body keeps the story alive. And that story matters. It matters because it defies every voice that tried to silence you, every rule that told you your body was not yours, every sermon that treated desire as sin. It matters because it says, I am still here, still warm, still wanting, still worthy. Word count, awaiting continue. Section 10. When the fire doesn't fade. You think it should have gone by now. This thing inside you, the ember that glows in the hollow of your chest, should have cooled with time. That's what they all say. That women like you, alone too long, soften like fruit left out too long. That with each passing year, the fire dims, flickers, finally fades. But it hasn't. Not for you. In fact, it burns brighter. It's not like it once was. Not the sharp, untrained hunger of your youth. It's not urgent, not chaotic. It's something deeper now. Slow, measured, a steady warmth that simmers beneath everything you do. You feel it in your hips as you walk the narrow path between your home and the fields, skirt brushing against your ankles. You feel it in your throat when the widow laughs at something you've said. You feel it in your fingertips when you trace the edge of your window frame, where once a lover's name was carved and weathered down with time. Desire, they told you, belongs to the young, that it's reckless and irresponsible, that it must be tamed. But this fire you carry now is not reckless. It is sacred. Medieval records rarely speak of women past childbearing age as anything but crones or saints. To be neither is to be invisible. But invisibility, you've learned, is a kind of freedom. No one watches you anymore, not like they used to. The priest passes you without comment. The gossips have moved on to younger prey. And in that absence, something precious blooms. Time, space, self. You are not old. Not truly, but the lines at the edges of your mouth carry stories, and your hands, once unsure, now move with intention. You know what you want, even if you never say it aloud, and you want to keep feeling. Even if no one touches you again, you want to stay alive in your own skin. You bathe slower now, not to cleanse, but to savor. The warm water on your thighs, the steam against your neck. You hum as you rub oil into your arms, into the soft skin beneath your breasts, into the soles of your feet. You imagine hands, not any specific ones, just the memory of warmth, the idea of closeness. Historians argue whether women of your age in the Middle Ages experienced a kind of spiritual rebirth once freed from the obligations of marriage or child-rearing. Some claim women turned to God with new fervor. Others believe they turned inward, finally able to reclaim what had been given away for decades. You think maybe it's both. You tend your herbs like they are holy. You speak softly to the lavender, the rue, the feverfew. You run your fingers over their leaves like prayers. And when the widow visits and your hands brush as you stir the pot over the fire, you feel it again, that ember, glowing bright. She sees it too. One night, you talk longer than usual. The conversation twists and turns, from the weather to old legends to the way the moonlight touches her cheek. You don't touch. You don't need to. The fire between you is warm enough without contact. It feels dangerous, this joy, this knowing. But you refuse to bury it. Instead, you name it. You name it in your journal, a rough book bound with twine where you scrawl thoughts when the world is too quiet. You write, I am still a flame, not a spark, not a flicker, a flame. I warm, I burn, I live. You keep writing. Not every day, but when it matters, when the fire stirs. When you wake in the middle of the night with a memory or a dream or a longing that doesn't make sense and doesn't need to, you learn that the fire is not your enemy. It does not demand. It reminds. It reminds you of every smile you dared to return, of every dance you joined after the others had stopped, of every moment your body trembled, not from fear or cold, but from feeling. And those moments are yours. Not borrowed, not stolen. Yours. You think of the women who never got here, who were silenced before the fire could spread, who were taught to snuff it out with duty and shame. You honor them with every slow step you take, barefoot across your stone floor, with every flower you press into your book, with every breath you let out like a song. Some nights, the fire roars. On others, it hums. But it never dies, and neither do you, because your body, your heart, your hunger, they are not burdens. They are proof. Proof that you are not hollowed out by age or loss or solitude. You are filled with memory, with beauty, with light. And though the world may forget to see you, may walk past you like a shadow fading from stone, you will not forget to see yourself. You carry the fire, and you will carry it until the end. Section 11. The Wildness in the Woods. It begins with a walk. You take it after supper, when the light has softened and the sky bleeds into violet. Your feet know the path by heart, past the edge of the garden, beyond the fence, through the narrow trail of alder trees that leads into the forest. You've walked this way for years, but tonight something feels different. You hear it in the hush between the rustling leaves. You feel it in your ribs, in the place that pulses when you remember things too tender to speak aloud. The woods are not empty. They never were. In medieval times, forests were feared and revered. They were the edge of the known world, where law and order frayed, where bandits hid, and spirits were said to dwell. Priests warned that the devil could be found lurking beneath the boughs. But some women, those who no longer fit inside the walls of the village, found refuge there. You understand that now, because the village is full of eyes. Even if fewer look your way these days, they still could. And you've grown tired of folding yourself into spaces that don't allow your full shape. In the forest, no one watches. You walk until the canopy thickens, until the air smells like moss and bark and secrets. Here, your breath comes easier. Your thoughts unwind. You untie your hair. You press your palms against the rough trunk of an ancient oak and feel something stir. A wildness. Not chaos, not madness, but the kind of freedom that only exists when you are entirely alone and entirely yourself. Historians still argue whether medieval women ventured into the woods for ritual, rebellion, or simply necessity. Stories survive of herbalists, midwives, wise women who knew which roots to boil and which mushrooms could make you dream. They were feared, sometimes hunted, but always needed. You like to think you would have known them, sat with them, learned from them. Sometimes you pretend you are one of them. You gather herbs with careful fingers. You hum songs you don't remember learning. You step barefoot onto the cool earth and let your skin remember the world before it was bound in rules. You make a small fire, not for warmth, but for company. It crackles softly, and you sit beside it with a bundle of rosemary and yarrow in your lap. You say nothing. There is no need. The forest listens without judgment. You unlace your bodice, not to tempt, not to scandalize, but simply to breathe. You let your shawl fall from your shoulders. You feel the breeze against your collarbone. It isn't lewd. It isn't sinful. It's true. The wild doesn't care if you're modest. It cares if you're honest. And tonight, you are. You remember stories passed in whispers of women who danced naked beneath the moon, of sisters who spoke to foxes, of old wives who claimed their desires came from the forest, not from men. They were always punished in the end, at least in the tales. Cast out, burned, silenced. But you wonder if some of them simply disappeared into the trees and chose never to return. Because what they found here in this quiet, in this wildness, was themselves. You lie back on the moss. It cushions you like a cradle. Above, the trees sway gently, stars peeking through the gaps. The fire flickers beside you. The earth is cool beneath your body. You feel the weight of years melt from your limbs. You are not a woman of war or a widow or a sinner or a saint. You are a creature of breath and flesh and bone, nothing more, nothing less. You close your eyes and rest one hand on your belly. You are still here. You are still burning. And in the woods, there's no need to hide the flame. It is not wrong to want. It is not shameful to need. It is not wicked to feel alive in your skin. You know now why they feared the forest women. Because they could not be owned. Because they did not apologize. Because their joy was not for sale. When you finally rise, the fire has died down, but the warmth lingers. You gather your things. You smooth your skirt. You walk slowly back along the trail, but something in you remains behind. A root, a breath, a whisper. You carry the forest with you now, in the set of your shoulders, in the light behind your eyes, in the calm that follows you even when the village walls rise around you once more. The others notice. They may not speak of it, but they feel it. Some are wary. Some are curious. Some are drawn to you like moths to the ember you no longer hide. The widow greets you with a touch that lingers a second longer than usual. A young girl at the well asks you if moss really helps heal a wound. The priest watches, puzzled, as if trying to place what's changed. You say nothing. You just smile, because the wildness is yours now, and you'll never forget how to return. Section 12, the language beneath the words. It starts with a glance. Not just any glance, one that lingers. One that holds too long to be an accident, but too soft to be an open invitation. The kind of look that slips between words and settles beneath your skin like warm oil. It's not the first time you've exchanged such looks, but it is the first time you let yourself answer with your own. The widow across the lane has always been kind, helpful, generous with her hands and her time. You've shared bread, laughter, stories in low voices. But now, as she hands you a length of wool and your fingers brush, it feels like something more, like a sentence spoken in a language only the two of you understand. In the Middle Ages, such unspoken understandings were rarely given voice. Desire between women was not only taboo, it was unrecorded, unnamed, erased. Historians still argue whether these relationships were romantic, platonic, or spiritual. But if you read the gaps between the lines, the poems exchanged between cloistered nuns, the paired names on unmarked graves, the coded embroidery passed hand to hand, you begin to see the truth. Women have always found each other, just as you're finding her. It isn't about sex. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It's about recognition, about the way your laugh fits hers, like a lock to a key. The way her hand on your shoulder stills something inside you that has rattled for years. You begin to speak in that other language, touches, glances, the way you lean in a little too close while kneading dough, the way she hums when you thread the needle just right. You find excuses to be near her, bringing extra herbs, offering help mending clothes, and she always says yes, always smiles. The village doesn't notice, or maybe they do and choose not to see. Two women sharing time is not unusual. It only becomes dangerous when you give it meaning. So you keep the meaning hidden in plain sight. You leave a ribbon tucked into her basket, blue, like the sky on a day you once spent laughing together in the fields. She wears it in her hair the next morning, and though she doesn't say a word, her eyes glow with understanding. This is how you build something safe in a world that calls your warmth unnatural. With patience, with quiet joy, with care. Desire is not always fire. Sometimes it's a slow-growing thing, a vine that wraps gently around your ribs, not to strangle but to hold. You carry her laughter with you when you fetch water. You think of her hands when you grind spices for stew. You feel her absence like a soft ache when days pass too long without her voice. One afternoon a storm rolls in. You're caught on the road, the wind cold and wet and sharp. You think of sheltering under a tree, but before you can, she's there, pulling you beneath her cloak, her body pressed against yours for warmth. Her breath is close, her hand curls around yours. Neither of you says a word. You don't need to. There's a kind of courage in silence, a kind of confession. Later, back at your hearth, you dry by the fire. She helps you comb the tangles from your hair. Her fingers are careful, reverent, and when she finishes, she doesn't pull away. Her hand lingers at the nape of your neck. That night, you lie awake thinking of her hand. Not what it did, what it didn't, the space between gesture and decision, the restraint, the respect. You realize how few people have ever touched you like that, with the intention to honor, not to claim. It's that reverence you fall in love with. The way she sees you not as a wife, a vessel, a sinner, but as a person, whole, complex, deserving. There's no name for this in your world. The church does not bless it. The law does not protect it. But still, you feel it growing, like something planted long ago that finally pushes through the soil. You begin to give her pieces of yourself in quiet ways. A poem scratched onto birch bark, a pendant carved from bone, a loaf of bread shaped into a heart hidden beneath cloth. She gives you stories of her youth, of a sister who vanished in a winter long ago, of a dream she once had about two wolves circling each other in the snow. She says the wolves never touched but always walked side by side. You don't ask what it means. You know, sometimes at night, you still feel the ache in your chest, the longing, the hunger. But now it is not hollow. It is not lonely. It is full of something glowing, hope. You know you'll never stand in a church and speak vows, but you've made your own kind of promise. One touch at a time. Section 13, bound by thread and flame. There's a rhythm to your days now, shaped by more than chores and necessity. It hums beneath the surface of everything, like a thread stitched into your hours. You wake before the village stirs, light the hearth, and brew tea that smells of cinnamon and nettle. Your hands are slower than they once were, but steadier. And when you sit down at your spinning wheel or embroidery hoop, it's not just about work anymore. It's about memory. It's about her. She visits more often now. No one questions it. Two widows keeping each other company. What could be more innocent? And in many ways, it is innocent. The world has no patience for your kind of closeness, but it also lacks the imagination to truly recognize it. So you move unseen, unbothered, free. Historians still debate whether emotional intimacy between women in medieval times crossed into romantic or erotic territory. Some point to the passionate letters exchanged between abbesses, or the poems buried in the margins of illuminated manuscripts. Others argue that affection between women was simply one of the few outlets for tenderness in a brutal, male-dominated world. But you don't need a historian to tell you what's real. You feel it in the hush that falls over the room when she enters, in the way your body recognizes hers, not in a frantic, youthful rush, but in a deep-rooted calm, as though your very blood remembers the shape of her nearness. One afternoon, she brings dyed thread, indigo, scarlet, gold. She's bartered for it from a traveling merchant. Too fine for the likes of us, she says with a laugh, but her eyes say otherwise. You begin stitching together. Not words, but pictures. A fox curled beneath a tree. Two stars chasing each other through a dark sky. A field of heather with no path, just footprints. You don't say what the images mean. You don't have to. The language between you is now fluent in silence. At night, you sit by the fire and pass the embroidery back and forth, adding to it with each meeting. The cloth becomes your story, an invisible script for a life you're quietly writing together. And still you burn, not in the destructive sense, No one is set aflame, but the fire remains, low, steady, warming. It lives in the way you brush her sleeve when you pass in the kitchen, in the way your voices soften when the world outside feels too sharp, in the shared breath between songs sung softly while mending. One evening, the village holds a feast, harvest celebration, music, laughter, ale flowing like water. You both attend, but not together. You sit apart, nod politely to those around you. The world watches, and you let it see what it expects. But when the sun sinks low and the torches are lit and the dancers begin to spin on the green, your eyes find hers. She smiles. You rise and walk toward the circle of dancers, not directly to her, but close enough that your hands might meet if the music turned just right. And it does, as if it always meant to. You take her hand. No one stops you. Perhaps no one truly sees. Or perhaps they do and choose not to. It is, after all, just a dance. But to you, it is more. It is a vow spoken without words. You return home that night with sore feet and a heart that feels too big for your chest. You lie awake under your wool blanket and think of the way her palm felt against yours, weathered, strong, familiar. That night, your dreams are filled with fabric, threads pulling together in impossible patterns, a tapestry that never ends, never frays, never unravels. You wake with the sunrise and feel something shift inside you. You are not waiting anymore. Not for permission, not for safety, not for time. You are living, and living in a world that has asked you to shrink, to silence, to vanish. That is the greatest act of rebellion. You decide to add a new square to your shared embroidery. A house with 2 chimneys, smoke rising in spirals, 2 chairs by a hearth. You don't show her yet. You want to wait until the moment is right. Because it's not just a picture, it's a wish. And for the first time in a long while, you believe wishes can be more than whispers into the night. They can be stitched into cloth, built into days, lived in fully, together. Section 14. The first frost comes early this year. You feel it before you see it, creeping in through the cracks of the shutters, lacing your breath with chill. When you step outside in the morning, the grass crunches underfoot. A thin layer of ice clings to the bucket's rim by the well. Winter is coming, and with it, a kind of quiet that burrows deep. You're ready for it, because now you have warmth that no frost can steal. She arrives at your doorstep before the sun finishes rising, her cloak pulled tight around her shoulders, cheeks flushed from the cold. You let her in without a word. The door closes behind her, and the world slips away. Inside, everything softens. There's soup on the fire, a blanket waiting. The chair beside yours creaks as she sits. You hand her a mug, fingers brushing again. A touch so small, yet it sparks something so large inside you it feels like thunder beneath your ribs. This is what your winters used to lack, someone to share the silence with. In medieval Europe, winter was more than a season. It was a test of endurance, of patience, of faith. The snow made roads impassable, halted travel and trade. Villages shrank inward, families huddled by fires, food stores were counted, rationed, guarded, and loneliness like hunger gnawed at the soul. But now with her, there's a fullness to your days. Even when little is said, her presence wraps around you like wool. Together, you mend linens, dry herbs, tell old tales. Some nights you share a bowl of stewed pears and laugh over the stickiness on your fingers. Other nights you say nothing, just sit shoulder to shoulder, the firelight flickering across your faces. There is no title for what you are, no blessing, no protection. But there is love, and that is a thing neither church nor winter can erase. Historians still argue how medieval women survived harsh winters, not just physically, but emotionally. There are records of songs sung around hearths, of riddles passed between neighbors, of handmade gifts exchanged in quiet ceremony. These small acts of connection were lifelines. You understand now how crucial they were, because connection is what keeps the cold at bay. You begin to carve a small token for her, a heart wrapped in vines, etched into a piece of cherry wood. It's nothing grand, just a thing to hold when days grow dark too early. You don't know when you'll give it to her, but carving it becomes part of your ritual, a private act of devotion. She brings you small offerings too, a dried apple strung on twine, a square of cloth scented with lavender, a bundle of feathers wrapped in ribbon. For your dreams, she says, as if dreams need protection. Maybe they do. One night the snow begins to fall. You watch it from the window together, wrapped in the same blanket. Outside, the world turns white. Inside, the fire casts long shadows on the walls. She hums a song from her childhood, something wordless and sad. You don't ask what it means. The ache in her voice tells you enough. You press your head to her shoulder and stay there. No one sees. No one needs to. Because here in this house, you have created your own kind of sanctuary. A secret hearth, a place where longing is not shameful and comfort is freely given. There are risks, always. You know that. A curious neighbor, a priest with suspicions, one careless moment too public. But fear no longer governs you. Not completely. You've lived enough years hiding from your own skin. Now you live inside it, and it feels like peace. One evening, you finally show her the embroidery square, the little house with 2 chimneys. She runs her fingers over the stitches slowly, tracing each line as if learning it by touch. Her eyes glisten, but she does not cry. Instead, she leans forward and kisses your cheek. Soft, certain, a promise. That night, you sleep easier than you have in years. You dream of warmth, of rooms lit by candlelight, of a love that doesn't flinch when spoken aloud. And when you wake, the snow has thickened on the windowsill, but inside, the coals are still glowing. So are you. Section 15, A Quiet Forever. The snow doesn't melt for weeks. The road out of the village becomes nothing more than a ghost line between drifts. Horses struggle through the ice. Travelers disappear from the landscape. The world folds inward, silent, pale, slow. But in your home, the world hums gently forward. Warmth radiates from the hearth, and your lives settle into a rhythm that is more than survival. It is sustenance. She moves in, not officially, not with ceremony, but with familiarity. One morning, her sewing kit is still on the table from the night before. The next, her shawl hangs beside yours on the wall peg. She begins tending to the garden with you, her hands in the same dirt that once ran through your dreams. You do not talk about the future. You live in it. It's not always perfect. There are cold nights when your bones ache and she sighs too often, days when you both feel the press of a world that would not understand. Moments when the silence between you isn't comfortable, but sharp. Still, you choose each other. Over and over, in the slow-cooked stews, in the shared glances over the rim of a teacup, in the way she places an extra log on the fire before you ask, in the way you hold her hand when the wind howls too loud. You hear whispers in the village, of course. Always. 2 women alone. Too close, too content. But no one dares confront you. Perhaps they think you are too old to be dangerous. Perhaps they know deep down that love in the face of winter is a kind of holy defiance. Historians may never record your names. Your story won't be etched into stone or sung by wandering bards. But you have written yourselves into each other, into every breath shared in the dark, every laugh muffled behind cupped hands, every night when your fingers find hers beneath the blankets and hold, simply hold. You live in the details. The embroidery that now hangs above the hearth, the braided rug you made together from old clothes, the scent of dried herbs mingling in the air. You've built something lasting, not in spite of the world, but quietly beneath it. Once, you feared your body for all the ways it betrayed you. Now, you honor it. You move slowly, but you move with intent. You bathe with her help when your knees stiffen. She hums softly as she combs your hair. You run your hands across her shoulders, still strong beneath the linen. This is not passion the way ballads sing of. It is not feverish, not wild. It is tender, knowing, intimate, and in many ways, braver than any night's charge. There is power in choosing joy after decades of silence. You both begin to talk about what comes next, not with fear, but with softness. Who will plant the garden if one of you falls ill? Who will tend the fire? Who will carry the memory of this love into the quiet years that follow? You've written letters, hidden among linens for the niece who visits once a year. A recipe book with a coded dedication. A sketchbook filled with symbols only she might understand. It's not much, but it's enough. Enough to whisper across time. We were here. We loved. We endured. One evening, as the last snow begins to melt, you sit on the bench outside your home. She brings you tea, warm and spiced. Birds call softly from the trees, and the world feels like it's breathing again. She takes your hand. No one is watching. It doesn't matter if they are. This is yours. Not in secret, not in shame, in truth, in full. And as the sun dips low, you feel no hunger, no ache, no fear. Only presence, only peace. Wind down, the fire has burned low now. The night presses in against the shutters, not with menace, but with comfort, like a heavy quilt across your chest. Your fingers are still, your thoughts quiet. The soft sounds of the hearth crackle in the background. That old shared embroidery, faded at the edges, hangs on the wall above you like a lullaby. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of rosemary and wood smoke. The memories gather gently, no longer sharp but worn smooth with time. A thread in a tapestry, a story in a long-forgotten tongue. She is nearby, humming that tune again. The one without words, the one you know by heart. Outside, the frost glitters across the garden, but inside it is warm. Inside, you are safe. Inside, you are held, not by arms perhaps, but by time, by memory, by something deeper than flesh or fear. You've lived, not loudly, not grandly, but fully. And in this quiet moment, with no more battles to fight, no more longing left unmet, you finally understand. The body remembers, the soul forgives, and love, when tended gently, will always find a way to bloom, even in the coldest winter. So rest now. Let the night fold you into itself. You are home. You are whole. You are free. End of script. Sweet dreams.